Welcome to the Revelly podcast. My name is Nicholas, also known as Matryoshka Monarchist or Pseudo-Deucalion on X. Today I'm joined by my co-host Laszlo, also known as Sele or Underground Aeon on X. Sele and I will be interviewing our friend Matthieu Pageau, author of The Language of Creation. We'll be discussing his next book on dreams and the symbolism of technological governance. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So, can I start with a question?
Yes, absolutely.
So, I feel like there is an intersection between symbolism and there's a very obvious intersection between sort of symbolism and the symbolic view and, let's say, our current age or technological environment. And that is the question of code and programming. And I wanted to ask you, Matthieu, what would you say is the symbolism of programming or the code?
Well, I mean, it's analogous to the idea of heaven, I think, in the cosmos. That's actually kind of pretty much one-on-one there. So it's like the hardware would be the earth and the facts and the material part, and the software would be, or the coding would be the information. So it would be like heaven, I guess, in the cosmos. A mini version of it. It's actually pretty
Interesting.
straightforward, I think.
So you mean like the analogy of like the blueprint, right? So the blueprint of a house,
Yeah.
for example, would be its code.
Yeah, so it's like the laws of it's the equivalent of the laws for a system, I guess, right? I think it's
Yeah,
pretty straightforward.
but still I would ask if, there's all these different practices. So to me, it's one of the something interesting in contrast to symbolism is that, so some people would say to find, some kind of divine insight or to find some kind of divine image, they would use some type of obfuscation. So they would try to use codes or they try to use some kind of coding, and then they try to then sort of randomize that or use them as like parts and they rearrange them, and that's how they try to get insight. So I get the blueprint analogy, but I would say there is also a sort of like more divinatory part to code, or I don't know if you agree with that. I'm just
Well,
curious
I
what you
agree with
think of
the
that.
idea that there's another aspect, which is about getting insights from parts that you don't know, but I wouldn't call that the code. But I mean, if in a system you don't know the code, let's say if you know the code, then you know the code. It's like if you know the law, then you know the law. But if you don't, then you have to figure out the law without knowing it. That's not the same thing. It's like you're looking at it from bottom up, let's say. You're looking at it from an unknown space. You don't know the law, but there is a law, let's say. It's like science, really. I mean, if you don't know the laws of nature, you're trying to figure them out. You can't have access to them. You need to do something else to see the law or to see the implications of the laws of nature, let's say. So you do experiments, right? I mean,
Is there a
if you
clear
have access to the
relation?
law, you have access to the law. If you don't, you don't. So
Is there a
it's like, yeah.
clear relation between law and dream?
Well, I would say there's not a clear relation. No, I would say dream is more like divination. Dream is when you don't know something. Because the law would be when you're awake. That would be more according to the law. It's like your mind, let's say in the analogy, your mind would be issuing the law to your body, and your body would either follows it or not. But during the day, it mostly follows it, right? I mean, unless you're sick or something, unless you're intoxicated or something, then your body struggles to follow your mind, and your mind kind of struggles to give orders, right? But in a normal, let's say normal situation, your mind is issuing laws to your body, issuing commands, we could say, orders, and then your body does it pretty naturally, almost automatically, we could say, unless you're asking your body to do something it can't. Well, then you start to see the problem there. But so I would say when you sleep, when you dream is when you fall asleep, and when you fall asleep is when you lose this connection to the law of your mind. So your mind is no longer able to issue commands to your body because you're falling asleep. So it's like, this is what happens when you...
Oh, you cut out there briefly.
Okay. Well, I could just keep going and we can cut that part out, I guess, right?
Yeah, no problem. So when I was asking if there's a relation between law and dream, I was remembering the story of Saint Joseph the Patriarch, and his interpretation of the dreams of Pharaoh becoming, let's say, becoming a legal instantiation, becoming an economic plan. And so do you see a relation there between, let's say, dreams and I suppose maybe the interpretation of dreams and new laws, or
Yes.
the development of new laws?
Yeah, in that sense, I understand what you mean. So, but it goes with what I was saying, really, because it's like a special case. So it's kind of like when you don't know the law. Again, it's an example of that, really. There's a higher law that you don't know, and then in order to see this law or to gain access to it, you've got to see the riddle first. So it's just like science. Before you see the laws of science, you got to see the riddle of nature. You see the riddle, you see something that doesn't make sense to you in nature, and then you try to figure it out, and you eventually, through experimentation and things like that, you can find, it's like a puzzle that you solve, basically, of nature. Then you find the law, and then the law makes sense. All of a sudden, now you know this law, and you know where you got it from. You got it from the puzzle of nature. So it's kind of that when you dream, you could see it like that too. Dream as the expression of a law that you don't know. That makes sense to me. That makes sense. If we see it like that. So there's the law that you know, that's your head, right? That's when you're awake. This is kind of what I was saying before. Then when you fall asleep, you lose the law that is your mind, and then you fall into a state that's akin to kind of nature, okay, where you don't control. It's not your reason and your will that controls your experience. You lose control of the experience, and then you can, I think, gain access to higher laws through a riddle. So you see the riddle of a higher law than you, basically. So it's like in science, when you see things you don't understand, you solve this puzzle, and then you get a law that you didn't have before that's probably higher than what you knew. So we could see the dream as you're experiencing a realm of puzzle, and then in that puzzle, if you solve it, if you find the interpretation, then that's like the higher law that is above you. It's like above your law, your will. So you could get, we could say you could get an insight into the laws of God from a dream, exactly like you said, like in the story of Joseph. That's how that's definitely how I interpret it. So in order to get new laws, higher laws, so this goes with what I talk about often, the idea of a crown. When you dream, you can get a crown because you see a puzzle, and in trying to solve that puzzle, then what you thought was the law is actually there. You see there's something higher than your law. You see it now. So you gain access to a higher law. That's like getting a crown too. So that's what happened to Pharaoh. We could say he had a dream, and Joseph was there to interpret it. And that's like he received the law from God, like above him, that kind of crowned him. And that's, yes. So we could say in that sense, there's a relation between dreams and new laws or higher laws. I agree with that, definitely.
And there's even a relationship there between the dream of Pharaoh and the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, where the dream of Nebuchadnezzar reveals, let's say, the laws or patterns that play out across empires. Let's say the law that is the life of an empire, with the statue that Daniel interprets, the statue of King Nebuchadnezzar, and its different parts, and those partitions are, let's say, laws as well, of a type, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think the dream of Nebuchadnezzar and well, there's two dreams though, but let's say the one with the statue, we could say is the same as the dream of the king of Pharaoh. We could say is the same kind of meaning because it both represents the falling of your empire. It both represents a state of success of an empire, and then there's a famine. Usually, this is how it's represented: the idea that nature's coming back now. You're losing control of the land, right? Because that's what happens when you lose control of the land. You get famines. Your land doesn't produce what you want. That's what it means. It's like, because when you do agriculture, you're imposing your will upon the nature, really. That's what you're doing. It's like you have your idea. Let's say I want to grow carrots. I'm imposing my will on nature, because usually it wouldn't grow carrots in this place, let's say. So you're imposing your will, but after a while, this fails. After a while, if you practice agriculture, it doesn't work anymore. The land doesn't do what you want, because it wouldn't naturally do that. It's like you're forcing it. So you're forcing it to do something. So at one point it doesn't produce anymore. It can't do it. It's tired. Let's say the land is tired. So both dreams represent that, really. The idea that after a while your empire kind of falls because you're trying to impose your will for too long on nature. And then there's a moment of falling. So in the case of Pharaoh, he was lucky because Joseph was there to help him not lose the empire, you see. Because if Joseph wouldn't have been there, then what would have happened? There would have been a huge famine for 7 years. That's a long famine, right? I mean, a lot of people probably, the civilization would have been lost probably.
Mhm.
So good thing Joseph was there to predict through his dream and say, do this to preserve the land. It's kind of like, it's a little bit like it's a little bit like what he does is like what happens in the desert when they have double portion of manna before the Sabbath. It's like, now you got to pick double portion. So that's what it is, really. Joseph is saying to Pharaoh, there's going to be a big equivalent of a big Sabbath, a resting of the land. They call it a famine, but that's really what it is the land is resting. It's like the Sabbath of the land. So the land is going to rest now. It's not going to give you what you want. It's not going to produce food. So you got to have double portion of grain. So he listened to him, and then he saved his empire like that. Because if he wouldn't have done that, it would have been the death of his empire. So that's what I mean when I say Nebuchadnezzar, same thing, really, because it's an empire. Each part represents different empires, but it's like each one falls. Why do they fall? It's because for the same reason, because if you impose your will on nature, eventually it falls. It gets taken over by something else. And then it creates a kind of a cycle, we could say, which is the cycle of nature, basically. Certain things work at certain times, you see, and then they all fall, and then they're replaced by something else. This is nature, really. What grows is what has the most potential to grow. It's like the we could say the, how do you say that, the battle of nature, whatever wins is what's meant to win. So that's kind of what it represents at Nebuchadnezzar. Different empires in succession kind of destroy the other one, and then eventually it all falls down. So we could say the dream is similar, and even the other dream of Nebuchadnezzar is the same too, because he loses his empire, turns into a beast, so he becomes wild. So we could say it goes back to nature. Again, it's the same dream, except we kind of see it from a different perspective. We see it from the perspective of the king that loses his empire and becomes wild. And then he's returned. So it's these dreams are kind of saying the same thing, really.
Hmm.
Can I ask something? Um, I'm very curious about this. So, would an encounter with nature be similar in pattern to, let's say, an encounter in a dream or with a dream? And would that also have a similar pattern to, let's say, an encounter with the woman? That's the sort of like association that I made. So I'm just asking if is there any validity
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah. I think it represents similar patterns. Yeah, the falling asleep is going back to nature. That's how you should see it, really, because that's what it is. It's like you impose your will on your body during the day. That's like agriculture. You're imposing your whatever you want to grow for a while. There it works, and then it stops to work. Same thing here. When you sleep, that's what happens. You impose your will on your body for a while, and then at one point it doesn't work anymore, and your body returns to nature. So we could say when you sleep, you're going back to nature. And the thing with the woman, it's related. It's definitely related to all that, especially the idea of the strange woman or the foreign woman. Usually that's how it's represented. When there's renewal, there's the idea that it's a strange woman that renews you. So that's a big theme in the Bible.
I was just gonna ask a similar thing where, like, you mentioned this idea where there is a law above you and you're not yet aware of it. And sort of looking at our world in some sense, I would say that looking at what's happening in the world kinda like it's a similar situation, I feel like, where when you look at the government, when you look at just your community, when you look at the technology that you use, when you look at all of these devices around you, it's constantly a sort of question of like, okay, what kind of law governs this? And what I want to ask is there a story analogous to this idea of like purposefully, purposefully blindsiding ourselves from this law?
Okay, purposely not knowing what laws govern us. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Or like trying, because I feel like that's sort of a like seemingly, let's say, modernity kind of drives towards that, where we are trying to obfuscate more and more of the real law that governs us, but it's more prevalent everywhere. And yeah, I'm just asking if there's any. If I'm saying something dumb, just tell me. So
No. I just want to make sure I understand what you're asking. Why does it have to be on purpose, though? That's the question I have right now for you.
because
I think it's not on purpose.
Well, I mean, I don't think it is governed by people anymore. Let's say that, but people have given up their ability to govern or be responsible. Maybe that's a byproduct. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I do feel like historically we are always like moving towards this point of more and more obfuscation, and seemingly people think it's a kind of progress. So I would say we do participate in it in some sense, but yeah, maybe, yeah, you're probably right that it's not purposeful because we don't understand the purpose. Maybe there's like a decoy purpose there, it's like people kind of
But
misunderstand it, and then through that decoy, they fulfill this law that they don't understand. So yeah, you're right.
But I think it's an important subject what you're saying. I mean, I think I'm still trying to understand what situation we're in right now. Maybe I never will, but like what precisely situation we're in. And I'm not sure that I think it's part of the problem. Like you said, we're being obfuscated of what's really ruling over us. I think you're right about that. It's not voluntary for me, that's for sure, but it could be voluntary for other people. You see what I'm saying? It depends what you mean by is it on purpose or not. It's not on purpose for me, that's for sure. I'm not willingly obfuscating what's ruling me. I think the obfuscation is coming from the ruling class, honestly, not from the people who are being ruled upon. So I agree that there is an obfuscation going on. I have no idea who rules me right now. I have no idea. I see a bunch of people saying they rule me, but it's clear to me that it's not. It's not what is being said. I mean, I could see that there is some kind of strange law governing me right now. There's a strange law governing me. I don't know what that law actually is. So do you see what I'm saying? It's like I
Yes.
see the problem of we're being ruled by things that we don't know, but I know it's not me that decided that. So I'm guessing somebody somewhere decided it, unless this is just like you said, a byproduct of a civilization that's falling. But even if it's that, we could still try to understand why this is happening.
I
Basically,
I would
what I think really is just that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, no, I was just like wanted to say that, well, I don't think it's a falling civilization per se, because it's it's very strange. It seems intelligent. I think there is an intelligence in the way sort of our civilization, quote unquote, rots. There's an intelligence to it. And yes, I would agree that there's like these different degrees of, let's say, like initiation into what's the law, like what's the true law. But I'm not sure if there is anyone who is like fully initiated in it. I don't know. That's just a parenthesis of that, or bracket that. Um,
Yeah, it's hard to know. I think I understand what you're saying. Unfortunately, we don't know. I think really, if you want my opinion, what's happening now, I just think we're being brought into a new system, a new larger system of governance, and that's pretty much it. Like we're being transferred, we're being absorbed by a bigger system. So countries are like kind of fake right now. They're not really what they think they are or claim to be. They're just part of a bigger system. It's like we're not admitting it yet, or we're not being told yet, but it's already started this integration of different nations into this big system. I mean, it's not like they have to tell us in order to do it. They could just do it. We don't need our permission. I
Uh-huh.
think they should ask our permission, but they clearly don't care. They're just doing some plan. I don't know exactly who and why. It's not hard to understand why, really. It's just the age-old question of power and such. But, I mean, we're being integrated into a larger system, and then they're not asking our permission to do it. So that's why we're obfuscated from it, because they don't necessarily want our opinion on whether or not we agree that we should be integrated into this larger system. So they're just doing it. And that I think, is where the obfuscation comes from, because they don't want us to say no. They just don't want us to say no. So they're doing it. And that eventually, I think it'll be revealed what's going on. They're just going to admit, or it's just going to become normalized that we're now in a big system that's not about countries anymore, or something like that. It's just going to be a big, maybe world system. Even I'm not sure, but it looks like that's where it's headed. It's kind of just happening. They're not going to vote it in, that's for sure. It's not going to be voted for.
yeah,
That's what I
Yeah,
mean
there
by it's
there
obfuscated.
They're speaking about civilization states. By they, I mean, in particular, the multipolar types. Those who propagate the idea of multipolarity. They speak about civilization states, like great spaces, very very Schmittian ideas, and some of those ideas are also rooted in the Club of Rome and their 10 nations, which may relate to the 10 kingdoms of Revelation. But that's more speculative. But I do think that there is a history to the system that's being constructed, and it's out there to be studied. I think it's you know I think you have to hold kind of in order to discover that system, you do have to really hold to, I think, an idea that ultimately the great system is creation. And this is why I think your book is so important, because if you can hold the frame of creation, if you can understand the language of creation, then all of the frames and structures that are built within that, they ultimately have to conform to that to some degree, which is why I think ultimately those who govern us follow the laws of the Old Testament to some degree, and because they have to, in order to have any leverage, they have to be standing on a ground that I think a lot of Christians have lost, which I think is part of your project, is remembering the lock, and that lock being connected to the Old Testament, that lock being connected to what's happening in terms of the system being constructed. I think they're clearly related. If you do any research into the history of the system that we're speaking about, I don't think it's secular per se. Beyond that, there is a secular having some etymological relation to state. There is a state being constructed, but I think there's still a temple behind that. There's still a church behind that. Let's say even that is constructing that, and it's because you need that in order to influence reality, or to influence people, or however you want to frame it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Laszlo, you had some questions. If you want to add on to what I said, Mathieu,
Yeah,
if
no,
you
no,
would
it's
like
just
to
this
add on.
idea where, yeah, if you want to harness the power of influence, you will have to have some kind of representative structure, some type of symbolic language, right? You need to have a type of creation mythos, or um, yeah, let's say cosmology.
Mhm.
And I would say, yeah, no worldview kind of falls out of that question. Now, one of the interesting things I kind of want to add to this on the idea of governance is that, and creationism, is that cybernetics as a field of science, let's say, is very much concerned with, let's say, this kind of like, creationist, not creationist, let's say, it's very much focused on representing things in a way that could be understood as, let's say, symbolic. So, for example, so cybernetically, everything is kind of like an organic thinking system. And, cybernetics is what all of our technology is based in cybernetic theory, and the cybernetics that they invented after the nuclear bomb, or during the nuclear, when they developed the nuclear bomb. And cybernetics itself is, etymologically comes from the Greek word kybernetes, which means governorship. And what happened is, they discovered cybernetics. They discovered that everything can be understood through patterns, because what it means basically is just you see an input and you see an output, and then you put the output back into the input, and then you try to see the pattern of change between inputs and outputs. And it's basically trying to write a type of patterning language. And that slowly, even the idea of like nuclear holocaust comes from cybernetic simulations, early cybernetic simulations. The sort of acceptance of that on a global level is sort of the seed from which all global cybernetics came from, because it was both accepted by, um, the U.S. and the Soviet Union, were supposed to be enemies, but then they both put all of their science and all of their statehood in the hands of cybernetics, in the idea of like sort of like seeing how patterns govern things. Basically, that was the idea. And now we see its sort of greater conclusion, where we're at a point where now there are no more sides, no more sort of these countries. They don't hold any power anymore. I mean, we see that we saw that during COVID, I think. Cybernetics is ever present and it's everywhere. And cybernetics literally means governorship. So I just wanted to add that to this discussion, especially on governance and things.
Would you say there's a relationship between cybernetics and game theory?
Yes, absolutely. The same people who invented cybernetics invented game theory.
Norbert Wiener. Norbert Wiener is the connection between the two.
And von
Or
Neumann
sorry,
as
John
well.
von Neumann is the
Yeah,
connection
John
between
von
the
Neumann.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
John von Neumann
also
wrote a lot
invented.
about both topics.
Yes, yeah, and this comes after the nuke. It's kind of like, and they even call it sort of peacetime cybernetics. It's like the whole idea of sort of global peace and cooperation, quote unquote, comes from this idea of implementing cybernetics. And I would say subtly the idea of sort of patterning. So the things are governed by patterns idea, it emerges there. And I would say this is just the last bracket, is that if you have this idea that things are governed by patterns, you believe in creation at that point. And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know much
just in
about
a
cybernetics, but it's interesting for sure.
an interesting addition that you might have interesting insight on, Mathieu, is that both John von Neumann and Norbert Wiener, who worked on both cybernetics and game theory, they have this mythology wherein they claim to be descendants of the Rabbi Loew of Prague, who invented the golem, which was this Hebrew coded automaton that basically protected the Jewish people, but eventually turned on them. And you know that story is a very early myth surrounding, I would say, like automaton today and AI and computers. And and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier of those who govern the world in some sense have to also have at least one foot in, I guess, in the grounding of the world, in the ground of the world. And not just any worldview can govern the world. And the larger the scale, the more true that is in some sense, I think, is that you need at least an Old Testament understanding of the world in order to govern it at a and this relates to just interacting with reality in general, worldviews in general. I think like if we were to define what a hallucination is, or give an example of a hallucination, say you're driving, and you have perspective of the road. You have a worldview. You have a view of the road, a way that you're interpreting the road. If your worldview is too far off from what the road is truly, you can't drive. You wouldn't be able to drive. And so I think the same thing is true about the worldviews that govern the world is and why I think they relate to what's happening in the Middle East at the moment and these things is because the Middle East is the center of the world. And that's true beyond the worldview. Like let's say the trees do in fact exist, whether or not there is an observer to view them, let's say a human observer, because those trees are ultimately that forest is being observed by God, by the angelic hierarchies, by the powers and principalities that govern them. And so you need in some sense to work with the powers and principalities in order to have any kind of governance over the world. And I don't think that's just true of, on this grand scale. I think that's true at the micro scale as well. Like, and this is why, we pray over our food and things like this is like in order to interact with reality, you want some true connection with the powers and principalities that govern it.
Yeah. Well, I agree somewhat with what you're saying. I'll just say what I think, and you could reply if you want. I agree, but I also think it's possible to temporarily have something partial rule also. So something can have total power for a certain time, I think, and that thing might just have a very partial view of reality. So I see it kind of like the seasons, I see it kind of like a time cycle. Some powers have sway over the world for a certain time, but they don't encompass the whole thing. I mean, this is why in the Old Testament, this is why Jacob needed to have 12 sons. You see, it's kind of because it means something. It means like, let's say there's 12 months or 12 moons or whatever. And so each of these sons kind of represents a partial governance of the whole thing, you see? And so Jacob, it means something that he has 12 sons. Well, we could say the same about Jesus, obviously. So it kind of means you have the totality of it, and then each of these can maybe rule for a time. But what I'm saying is, if you don't have the totality of it, if you don't have, let's say, Jacob with his 12 sons, you might for a time mistaken one of his sons for the ruler of the world, because for some time he'll have sway over the whole thing for a certain period of time, but then it's temporary. I'm just saying this, I'm adding this for the idea that we could be fooled too. If we don't
Mhm.
see in the long term, we could be tricked into thinking that something has the whole picture.
Mhm.
Because I don't want to become too logical, like what you said. I kind of agree with the logic of what you said, that in order to rule the world, you have to have something, you have to have some knowledge.
Mhm.
Except we have to be careful not to be fooled by the aspect of the temporariness of it, because
Mhm.
something totally partial can rule for a short time. It usually grows really quickly and then disappears. Empires rise and fall like that, and sometimes they do take over the world, kind of, or a big part of the world at least.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we have to make sure we don't get confused with the partial thing that suddenly rules and
Mhm.
then is gone the next day.
Mhm.
And so that's why sometimes we don't even really have to fight against certain powers as Christians. I think we don't. Sometimes we do, but I think sometimes we just have to let things kind of play themselves out a little bit, not participate, just
Mhm.
remain ourselves, and empires rise and fall, and it's like we're not going anywhere. I think actually sometimes engaging in certain fights is showing your partiality.
Mhm.
What I mean by partiality is it actually works in both senses here, but it's showing that you don't have the totality of it, because you're too engaged in this little fight here. It's like you're putting all your eggs in this little fight.
Mhm.
It shows that you're partial, because these things will fight, and then one will win, one will lose, one will win. But if you have the real thing, if you see the big picture, you don't have to worry about these small fights. You could just let them happen. I don't think we're in that situation now. I
Mhm.
just want to make that clear. We're not in that situation. I think we are in the situation that you describe, where we're dealing with a big adversary here.
Mhm.
It's not something that'll just go away. It's something that's been growing for a long time. It's been growing and growing and growing, and kind of taken over subtly at first and now quite clearly. So we do have to do something.
Yeah, I mean to add on to your point, I do think that what you said is part of why Christian Rome lasted for so long is because it integrated all of the parts of prior governance, prior rulership. So it was had elements of the Gentiles, and it also had elements of the Jews, and it integrated all of those perspectives. In some sense, I think that even where we're at today is an attempt at that, and maybe an inverted version of that, where there are elements of, let's say, the pagans and the Jews in this alien way, that influence how things are being governed at the moment. But I think that will eventually tip, and maybe, let's say, the Gentile perspective will be lost, or the Gentile perspective will be lost, and there are consequences that come with that as well, I think. Or let's say that is part of how you begin, let's say, a countdown cycle. You begin the end of something when you lose the totality.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, for me, I think the issue is mostly just, I mean, you ruling covertly or ruling overtly, and I think to me that is the big issue. Some groups rule covertly and some rule overtly, and I think Christianity is a group that's supposed to rule overtly, and it's not supposed to do shenanigans. It's not supposed to infiltrate things, pretend to be those things, and then subvert, take over those certain groups and things like that. I think that's, if Christianity does that, I think it's not following the path that Christ laid out for us, because we're supposed to not be afraid to die. We're supposed to not be afraid to be martyred for our so we don't have to hide, we don't have to hide under rocks and stuff like that, because we're not supposed to be afraid. We're not afraid to be killed, basically. That's what Christianity is, in my opinion. That's the power of Christianity. The saints, that's why we won, because we're not afraid to die. It sounds dumb, but it's the all power. It's all powerful, almost. Not almost. It is all powerful. But if you're afraid and you want to rule, you can rule covertly, and then you infiltrate, and you pretend, you lie, you cheat, you pretend, you deceive, you create systems that don't care about the population, let's say, or don't care about the resources, just to rule. Because when you rule overtly, you can't do that. When you rule overtly, you can't not care about what you're ruling over, because it shows if you do that. But if you rule covertly, then you do all kinds of games, you could do all kinds of manipulations where you play one side against the other, and you could do all these things because you're hidden, your face is hidden. So you could pretend, you could do all kinds of games, all kinds of shell games and things like that. So this is what I see going on, and this is how I know we're in an evil system, really. I don't need to know exactly what's behind everything. I'm kind of naturally a conspiracy theorist, and I think we should be all conspiracy theorists right now, because it's obviously what's going on. There's a conspiracy. I don't care. I can't be gaslighted about that anymore. I mean, I'm not blind.
Absolutely.
I see what's before me. We're in a conspiracy. We're being ruled covertly by people. Let's say, I mean, I could speculate about who it is, but all day long. But I'm not so sure it's the obvious thing that we see. Also, I think we're being shown some things right now, and it's not necessarily what's really behind it. But there's no way to know, and that's part of the power of ruling covertly. You could do many, many kinds of games. And I think it's hard to know even how to fight that stuff, really. And I think actually, I know how to fight it. I think it's the same way the saints won in the first place. I think it's by being virtuous and being good, not craving power. And then these things will collapse, I think, eventually. God is there. We've got to believe in God, too. It's like we have to trust that God is on our side, and he's gonna do what it takes to win in the end. It's not gonna let evil win. I think it says so clearly in the Revelations. It says so clearly in prophecy that it's gonna look really bad for a while. It's gonna look like we're losing, and we might actually lose, literally. And then it'll be the return of Christ, and then I think that's how we win. It's hard to know what to do now individually, but we can at least not fall for it. We can at least not worship the golden calf. We can at least not participate in the decadence, all that fallen stuff that's clearly being promoted now, and not fall for the illusions too. And there's so many illusions right now. That's all I see is illusions everywhere. We just got to not fall for it. I don't even know how to fight against. It's like, how do you fight against illusions anyway? It's very difficult to fight against an illusion. But one way to fight against an illusion is to not pay attention to it too much, maybe, or focus on what we know is true. That's what I think right now. I could be wrong though. I don't know. We're in hard times right now. I think really, it's not easy.
You've written a little about King David and let's say lunar sovereignty, or the sovereignty of what you called covert rulership. How do you, I guess, reconcile that, or how do you see that play out? Do you see that play out with Christ taking on, I suppose, the kind of hidden king role when he becomes, let's say, the king of the Jews, and he's as almost kind of an irony, isn't that a type of rulership as well?
You mean on the part of Christ?
On the part of Christ. For his time, I doubt that the Romans knew he was God.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Well, in his time, he didn't try to take power.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He
Yeah.
died. That's what he did. That's how he took power.
Yeah.
He died and resurrected. So no, it's not covert ruling. It's I die and I resurrect, and then I rule. And even then, it takes time. It took many years, hundreds of years, for Christianity to even become visible, probably. it's easy for us to think that it suddenly took over, but it took over pretty quickly, actually, when we think about it in terms of a long history. But I mean, in those days, when Christ was killed, it probably looked like we lost. I mean, for a while there, it probably looked like we lost. Probably took a while there to see the miracles that God did, basically through the saints and through the martyrs. It's a miracle, really. You kill some people, and then they end up ruling over you. What's that? It's very strange. I mean, we can't act like this is not a strange way to take over, is to die and resurrect. I mean, it's serious stuff. We can't pretend to like do political analysis. We can if we want, but that's like not the way of Christianity. It's not that. It's not like to do let's say all kinds of Machiavellian stuff. I think Christianity is the opposite of that. I mean, I think it's good to have that mind, to have the snake mind. We have to have that, but we don't have to be snake. We don't have to act like snakes. But we have to have the mind to see and to know what the snake is. But we don't have to, like, we don't become snakes. That's what I think. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Jesus, he didn't do covert stuff at all. I think he was totally open about himself. He didn't always say what he was doing, but he wasn't in power. So why would he? He's not going to say I'm secretly governing when he wasn't. He wasn't governing. He came as a humble person in the world, and he was not a king. He was not a king. I mean, that's why he says things like, this is not my kingdom. Soldiers would be defending me now if this was my kingdom now. I mean, he says that at one point. So he's basically saying, I mean, I think also even when he says render unto Caesar, he's also just saying, I'm not in power. That's what he's saying. And part of that too, I think this is not really related to the subject, but I think people should realize too when he says render unto Caesar, it doesn't exactly just mean to let the temporal powers have their thing. And it doesn't just mean a separation of church and state, because there's another issue at play here. It's that Rome was a foreign power taking over Israel. So there's also that issue in there that we should remember. It's not just about separation of church and state. Rome was a foreign power. They were being ruled by a foreign power in their homeland. So that's what does it mean then when you say render unto Caesar? See, it's not just talking about church and state. It's talking about there's a foreign power ruling over you. Render unto that what belongs to it, So this is just a parenthesis here. It's not that much related to what we're saying, but
So how do you, I guess, so does the lunar symbolism that you speak about with King David completely fall away after Christ?
no, I don't think so. I think the church kind of is that, because the church is not in power.
Mm-hmm.
See, the church is kind of like able, it's kind of like there to advise that which is in power. We could say in heaven the church is higher than the king. I agree, but we're not in heaven, so we're on earth.
Right.
We're in this world. So in this world, the church is not above the king. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we could say it is, but it's not true. Like, it's in this world, it's not true. Maybe in heaven it's true, but we're not in heaven. So it's like the church is like an advisory role almost, in a way, to the king. So I think it is a little bit of the David imagery in the church. I think so, but it's not. It doesn't totally fit, because David is king, does become king.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Christ definitely has some of the lunar stuff in him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the idea that he evaded authorities his whole life, we could say. He did kind of evade, because it wasn't time yet. As he says many times, it's not time yet. Now's not my time yet. But the difference between Christ and David is that Christ died, and we accepted to die, but not David. So that's a big difference, right? So Christ was not hiding for the same reasons as David, we could say. It's similar, but it's not exactly. I mean, Christ, it's hard to compare anything to Christ, because, yeah, he has a lot of things in him, so it's difficult to compare sometimes. We got to be really good at understanding the ancient stories, which I'm not yet, I would say, to really be able to see Christ in these ancient stories. I see some of it, but not enough, I would say, to be precise about it. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you. Laszlo?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about it. This is interesting. This is really interesting. I would say, I just want to ask, what is the sort of parallel? Because, we mentioned now that the church um, this way that the church is kind of similar to King David. There is also this similarity, and we talked about this lunar side. Is that also part of why the church is also portrayed as a woman in some aspects?
Well, I think the church represents, yeah, well, we all know the church is like of the female aspect, right? We know this. It's clear in the church. We see the church as the bride of Christ, so we know there's a feminine aspect to it. So possibly. It's hard to, because it's not female to the empire or to the state. It's the female to Christ. So we got to be careful with that stuff. We always have to know what, if we want to talk about symbolism, we always have to put it next to the thing it goes with. So the church is the bride, the wife of Christ, not of the state or not of the emperor. So
Mm-hmm.
we got to be, but it doesn't mean that it can't be that too. The church can't be also seen as a kind of a feminine aspect to the king. It could be, but we just got to not make the wrong deductions here. You see what I'm saying? Got to be careful
Yes,
with
yes, absolutely.
deductions sometimes. But I see it in the church, the idea that there's something feminine about it. For sure, it's more introspection, because the king doesn't really do introspection. He just rules, It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and the church is more about introspection and things like that. It's more about criticizing the king sometimes when he does something wrong, and it's more personal in a way. In many ways, I mean, the king can't tell you what to do when you get up in the morning, like in your room or something. The church kind of can tell you privately what you should do or not. The king can't say privately what you do in your bedroom. Let's say the king can't say what to do and not, but the church can. A priest can tell you. Yeah, but also, one of them is going through power and the other one not. I mean, the church you're joined to the church willfully. You're not forced,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's an
Mm-hmm.
important difference. The king, he doesn't care if you want or not. It's like the king, you do what I say or else. The church is not doing that. So it's a very different relationship we have with the church and let's say the state or the king. King is kind of forcing us. So it's hard to know exactly. I mean, you can't really do much against the king except either fight or be creative in trying to convince the king that it's not doing the right thing, and that's what I think the church does. The church doesn't really go to war with the king. So in a way, it's kind of the female aspect that it serves in society, and in a way, I would say yes.
Yeah. That was kind of my association as well, as like yeah, because they don't outright use violence or any type of things. It's more like it's also just a longer term thing. Like a kings go and change very quickly, and the kingdoms fall apart and come together. But the sort of the church is sort of like stationary and kind of they don't. They have a more yeah. They have more time. Let's say
Yeah, they endure longer. For sure.
yes.
And it's kind of what the moon, it's also related to symbolism of moon. What you said kind of reminded me of the moon because the sun goes down every day, basically, right? But the moon stays for a month. It takes a month to go down. So you see, it kind
Mm-hmm.
of works what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
The moon is like not as powerful as the sun. It's not as strong. See, the king is strong. He could force you. He could almost make you pain. The sun could give you pain almost when it's really strong during the day. The moon is kind of not powerful, but it lasts longer. It's slower to do things, slower to change, and it lasts longer really. So it does. I see again with what you said. It works.
Yeah, and it also has like sort of subtle influence, I would say, as well. And it's related to water, which is
Yeah.
renewal. I would say the church is a type of it's a weird. Well, this is my own thing. I don't know if I'm right in seeing this pattern there, but so the church is a place. It is a place of renewal. Is there's all these like the state has a history of trying to somehow artificially create renewal or try to somehow systematize it or come up with something like that. And I think the church has it. They just have it. And sort of the state is kind of unaware of that. And then every time sort of like state thinking tries to see some part of the church that they want to use, they will always turn it into a type of like artificial tool, I would say, uh, which within the bounds of the church are sort of renewing, but then the state takes it and sort of tries to use it as a weapon in
Yeah.
some sense.
Absolutely. I mean, look, you could take really concrete examples of what you just said, because when you were saying it, I was seeing all these examples in my mind. But I mean, who was in charge of education really before the state took it over? It was basically the church, right? I mean, education, higher education and lower education, we could say it was the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then when the state took it over, well, then it becomes all of a sudden forceful. I mean, if you don't send your kids to school, the state can remove your kids from you. That's pretty forceful, I would say. So it's like now you have to go through this system. So it's like this is like the sun is imposing its strong light on you. It's like you're gonna learn or else, you know. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it's not even a joke. It's serious. Like you don't send your kids to school, they could take your kids away from you. That's
Yeah.
a pretty powerful thing there.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, probably education was more like up to you. You had to agree to receive this education. And that's kind of the moon part. It was probably more subtle to it. It was probably more gradual to it. It was probably more natural to more in tune with, let's say, slow progress of things of learning. And now the state takes it over, and now it's like grade 1, 2, 3, 4. It's all meted out, it's all squared out, and it's like you got to do it. And then it kind of falls apart when you do that, because now it's falling apart. I mean, the education system is a joke. I mean, I was a teacher for like 10 years, and I saw that it was a joke. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how it is over there, but over here it was a real joke. So it's kind of like imposing it on everyone, kind of like the solar will. It imposes its light on everything. That kind of ruined it. Really, it kind of destroyed it. And now it's a big joke. And now, I mean, it's like not serving its function anymore. It
Mm-hmm.
has other weird. It was kind of co-opted into for other reasons. And this has become like it's falling. I would say it's falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Education, I mean, and it's probably because it was taken over by the state. Why on earth was it taken over by the state? I often ask myself these kinds of questions. I'm like, how did they manage that? How did the government convince people that they would take over education? Same thing with healthcare. I mean, in the States it's not as bad, but in Canada it's like, why does the government control healthcare again? How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Medicine is controlled by the government? What?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, because see, medicine is even worse than education, in my opinion, because medicine is this lunar thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is this influence that is subtle and voluntary. You gotta agree to it, you know. And then the state takes over this thing called medicine, and now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's all square again. It's all scalpels and microscopes and scalpels, and it's like, and now we all have to fund it too. That's part of it. Now we have to fund this thing, and it's like it takes taxes, you know, like the government takes taxes to build roads. I agree with that, but I don't agree with taking taxes to create this health thing or this education thing. It's like, I don't think these things belong to the king, the government, the state. I don't think these aspects of life, like medicine, that's like a really feminine influence. I think medicine, even education, young kids and things like that. But it
I
was
mean,
taken over by the state.
they come from, the inpatient hospital as we know it was invented by Saint Basil in Constantinople. Prior to that, really only soldiers could receive the higher level treatment, like the more institutional treatment. Saint Basil opened that up to to the common people. And when it came to higher education, similarly, a saint contributed to that. Saint Leo, the mathematician, Archbishop of Thessaloniki, he was involved in the invention of the university as we know it. And so, yeah, exactly what you said. These things are coming from the church, and then eventually, the state's power that could come from that and co-ops it.
Yeah. And you know what? Now you're making me realize the obvious was pretty much what's probably happening now is the state is going to create a religion. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of taken over
Yes.
the domain of
Mm-hmm.
the feminine aspect or the lunar influence.
Yeah.
And now it's probably going to take over the whole thing, which means probably creating some kind of
Mm-hmm.
equivalent of a religion. But we'll be forced to.
I mean,
Yeah.
We
that's
will be
something that I
forced.
noticed too, even just from a propaganda perspective. If you look at the propaganda of rulers after World War I and World War II, there are no queens. There's no equivalent to a queen. It's only like a dictator, for example, like Hitler or Stalin, would only be portrayed by themselves, as if there's no woman involved, as if and the woman is completely hidden so as to not be there almost. And And I do think that that's related to, let's say, the iconoclasm of the woman in the state, and the state attempting to completely remove, I would say, the image of the Theotokos, or the Mother of God.
I would also say, just to continue on that line a little bit, is that even technologically, the state sort of absorbs. And yes, we are. You mentioned this idea of like the church being very personal. Yeah, sort of you can talk to you personally of what to do. And I feel like at this point we are sort of reaching the point where the state takes that function over as well. And we can see it in, well, two ways. I would say first, even this technology that we use right now, sort of these screens and which have icons. I mean, these are very much taken from. I would even say that the farther we go along in the state's sort of let's call it evolution, quote unquote, or the state's sort of power, the further back we are going in Christianity, or the earlier states of the church we are going to. And so now we have icons and sort of these screens that collapse space and time, um, sort of all over the world. And now we have things that can talk through them, and sort of that's also automated. And so we can already see how like people react to AI and artificial intelligence, and how it's almost like talking to a little, like a priest of the state kind of thing. It's a very strange. And
Yeah, you mean AI?
yes,
Is that
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah? Because it's like a personal thing, yeah. Because usually you can't talk directly to the king, or you can't talk directly to what governs you. Because it's kinda like you don't wanna look directly at the sun, it's too it's too powerful, I don't wanna interact with this thing. But now they're creating mediators, weird little fake mediators that allow you to, yeah, it's creepy, to talk personally to this thing that's gonna govern us. We're not there yet, but, they keep telling us,
Yeah.
though, it's gonna happen.
I mean, and we all know that it's, again, yeah, it's gonna be used, or it's always underlines a type of violence. And talking to the AI, talking to the sort of this like state religion, or like state-made religion, is gonna be absolutely mandatory. And it's gonna like, to me, what's interesting is how will the world get into a place where sort of not engaging with a state-crafted religion is a punishable offense, because then the state has to like see how that's a strategic problem.
Well, no, I think it's easy because they're going to make it so that if you don't interact with this thing, you're not gonna be able to function in society. It's pretty easy, that's how
All
they're
right,
gonna do
yeah,
it. They're
yeah,
not gonna say, "If you don't do it, we're gonna put you in jail," but they will not have to say anything. They'll make it so that if you don't, well, they're already doing it. I mean, they're already kinda doing it. I mean, you have to have a cell phone now. If you don't have a cell phone, you can't have a bank account because they ask you to identify yourself with your cell phone. So, I mean, that's just an example of how they could do these kinds of things. They make it cleverly, gradually, so that you're dependent, and not dependent because you want to, dependent because you have to. It's like,
Mhm.
let's say you don't want. I know because I don't want to have a cell phone. I don't, but I realized at one point I have to, because everyone's asking me to identify myself with this thing. So it's like I can't go in person every time I have to identify myself. Well, I mean, I can't go drive an hour away to the bank or something, show my ID or something, or show my face. So I have to have a cell phone. So, I mean, this is just a good example of, I mean, I don't carry it with me, but I have this thing in a pouch somewhere. It's like I keep it away from me, but I still have to have it, you see? But then they're gonna do all these kinds of techniques where you're gonna have to engage with the AI, let's say, whatever AI god they're building, I don't know, but that you're gonna have to interact with it. It's gonna be the only way to function. So that's how. They don't have to punish. It's like they just have to, yeah, make it impossible not to be in contact with this thing, which is
yeah.
scary.
You're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just hard to imagine that. So with sort of technologizing worship. So, well, I mean, it's not hard. I mean, we do see it as sort of people marking themselves in Revelation, let's say, and sort of like worshiping moving images of beasts and stuff. But, well, I mean, I guess they're gonna put something in your body or something. Probably at one point they're just gonna pull you apart and just make you like your own coherence of your own self or your own sort of remembering is gonna be tied to
Yeah. Well, I mean,
some.
it's you don't even have to imagine it. They're saying it. I mean, they're talking about plugging our brains directly into some system, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, I don't understand why anyone would fall for that, but I know people will. But it's like, do you realize that if you plug your brain into a computer, it's not you anymore. We can't know if it's you anymore. If there's a computer inputting directly into your brain, then there's no way to know if it's you or the computer speaking
Yeah.
anymore. Because the computer can emulate you, can simulate you. We already know that. It's going to get better and better probably. So it's like this: if this AI can simulate me, then if I plug into the AI, then there's no difference between me and the AI. Well, there is in terms of God, and the soul and everything. But in terms of what we see visually, in terms of what we perceive, there might not be a difference. It's like they can make an AI that simulates me, nobody's going to know. Except God. God knows. So, I mean, that's probably why we can't do this stuff, I think, as Christians. I mean, we can't enter into this weird thing that's happening because they keep telling us
think
they keep telling us that's going to happen. So I'm not even speculating. They keep telling me we're doing this now. We're going to plug your brain into the computer soon, and you're going to live forever as an AI. Okay, no thanks. Nope.
do you think there's part do you think part of the symbolism of the, let's say, chip in your brain, for example, is cutting off the remainder or closing off the outside, closing off the other? You're creating basically a closed loop between yourself and the state.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that relates to like the 666 typology,
Oh, yeah.
as well.
Yeah. It's creating robots.
Mhm.
I think these people are like slavers. They're like
Mhm.
slavers, I think. It's like the king of Egypt. They're like the king of Egypt that wants to enslave. And that's what it's going to be. It's slavery, basically, because as soon as you plug yourself into something like that, you're a slave now.
Mhm.
We can't
Mhm.
know if you're a slave or not.
Mhm.
I think it is that you are a slave, probably. So it's like evil wizards that are making slaves out of people through magic, I guess, through sorcery, kind
Mhm.
of like in Egypt. You're now taken over by this intelligence.
Mhm.
You don't decide anymore. I mean, they're not going to tell us that. They're not going to say that. They're not going to say if you plug yourself into the AI, you're taken over.
Mhm.
But since there's no way for us to know if that's the case, then we should assume that it is that.
Mhm.
It's a big risk to not assume that you're going to be taken over if you accept that.
Mhm.
I'm not taking that risk for sure. They
The
could just kill everyone and replace everyone with an AI simulation if they wanted. If
Yeah.
everyone plugs themselves in, nobody would be the wiser. Nobody would know. They could just absolutely just kill you by plugging you in there and then simulate you. Nobody would know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we'd all be robots. Nobody would know. It's funny. It's not ha ha funny, but it's funny.
Yeah. Have you contemplated the relation between the mark on the forehead and on the right hand and the tefillin received in Exodus when leaving Egypt? The Israelites, when leaving Egypt, they received the tefillin, which is these phylacteries that are attached to the forehead and the right hand. Originally, they're a symbol of freedom. They're originally a symbol of being freed from Egypt. In some sense, what we're suggesting is that something like, let's say, a chip in your head is like the inversion of that. It's like a mark that you're returning to Egypt almost. It's like that symbol that's received when fleeing is the symbol that actually ends up enslaving you, in the end. It's like a chiasmatic structure, inversion structure.
Okay. Well, I haven't thought about that because the symbolism of the phylacteries is not in the Bible. I mean, it's part of modern Judaism, so I don't
Sure.
even know how old it is, frankly. So I haven't really looked into that symbolism. But you could be right. Obviously, I don't really know.
There's something received in Exodus. It's like in the Old Testament on the forehead and on the right hand.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah, it's in the Bible, but it's
yeah,
not described. It's not like described. The ritual that they perform now is
yeah,
not described.
yeah.
It could be the same. I mean, I think these traditions subsist for a very long time, so it could
Mhm.
be. Could be, but since I don't know, it's like I'd never really looked at that. But I think you might be right. There might be a relationship, but I mean, it could be more than one thing too. As you know, it's not like symbolism works with just one association. But yeah, I could look into that if you want me to.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting if you have any insights on that symbolism.
I mean, I think to me the most insightful thing I've seen about 666 is the interpretation that it's related to Nebuchadnezzar's statue. I think that makes sense to me, a lot of sense to me, and it's related to the flood too. It's like 600 is the flood, and then the 66 is the dimensions of the statue. That makes a lot of sense because I see that statue as being something similar to what they describe as the beast system, because it's like you have to you have to bow down before this statue. And it's the king too. It's a statue of the king. So it's kind of like what we said before. It's kind of like a religion of the king.
Hmm.
And then it's like whenever you hear music, you bow down. So it's like even if you're in your bathroom or something, you hear the music, you got to go out and bow down. It's like it's something very intrusive. You see, it's like it's actually I think it's very interesting. There's a lot of information in that story of when you hear the you have to bow before the statue because music kind of represents something a little bit fleeting or a little bit arbitrary or a little bit circumstantial. You never know when you'll hear the music. So it
Hmm.
kind of almost to me it's comparable to again I'll have to go back to the COVID stuff, but it's comparable to what happened during the emergency stuff because when you're in emergency, it's like if we tell you to do this, you will do it, which is not the same as a law that's like always there telling you what to do in general. It's like a emerging law. It's like a law that is just if when you hear the music, you bow down, or it's like when you hear the siren, you go there or you do that. It's like an emergency state forever. You always have to be ready to listen to the instructions. It's not a fixed law. I think that to me sounds right with the idea of 666. It's kind of like this law is not like the law of Moses, let's say. It's another kind of law where it's always can be changing. And it's like at the last minute, we could tell you what to do and you do it. That's to me is slavery, actually.
Hmm.
When I describe that, that's what a slave is. A slave is when I tell you, you do it. It's like
Hmm.
there's no schedule, I'm going to tell you to do this and you will do it. That's a slave. So it's kind of what it is to me, the 666 thing. It's like a weird control, total control, which is not because when you make laws, it's not total control, right? Because when you make fixed laws, the laws don't have to not contradict themselves, right?
Hmm.
And the leaders also have to follow these laws usually, most of the time. Tyranny, a real tyranny, it's like there's no fixed laws. We're just going to tell you what to do for now and you'll do it. You see?
Hmm.
That's kind of what I see in this maybe pattern of 666 or the idea of a tyranny. It's like there's a the laws are not universal and they're not fixed. It could be even worse than that. It could be like we tell you specifically what to do tomorrow and you will do it. So it's even worse than the Nebuchadnezzar thing where when there's music, everyone has to bow down. It could be just like you specifically, go do this now, and then you
Yeah.
have to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know what would be the consequence of not going. It could be just not getting money or not getting income or something like that. And then we wouldn't be able to survive or something like that. But that's kind of
Right.
how I envision it. That's total tyranny to me. But I don't know if that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying it sounds right to me that the statue of Nebuchadnezzar is a kind of an ancient symbol of this future tyranny.
Hmm.
It feels right to me. And the other aspect is it's kind of what we were talking before, the idea of it's kind of a solar influence that kind of tries to take over certain domains that it should.
Hmm.
Because the number 666 is associated with the sun, if you look at ancient ideas of this number, it's like this it's the number of the sun really. And so it's like it makes sense this idea that it's a takeover of everything. And it's kind of opposed to the 7. And 7 represents more the lunar thing. It represents the cycle, got more the feminine aspect too. It's like the Sabbath, the cycle, nature, these things. And then the 666 is like that order of the sun. It's like it imposed upon you, and then it takes over everything. That's kind of intuitively. This is how I understand
Interesting.
that symbolism. Well, I have a lot of different ideas about that that number because I don't want to like fix my interpretation because I don't know. But I try to have different interpretations, and then so maybe one day if these certain things happens, I could see, okay, I was right about this, but not about that. It's like I'm not rigid in my interpretation of things that I don't know, obviously.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's to me there's also this interesting idea about how the statue is also an image. So they all have to. So like, it's not even they don't even bow at the king; they bow at the king's image. And to me, it's a very interesting idea where perhaps they think that the image is sort of this like it's something that's sort of beyond language or beyond the law almost. It's an image and then it's more complete, let's say, and it's more,
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. It's
yeah,
interesting.
you look at an image and then you immediately recognize what's on it, or it's much faster than sort of. And again, this is like this thing with time of like there's an image and it's a very, let's say, I could imagine it being sort of solar almost, like it's there. And then with
Yeah,
the
it's a golden statue too. Huh? It has something to do with solar. It's golden, so I think it is related to solar influence. But you're right about image because image also means fixed. It means that too. It's a statue. A statue means something that's not going to change. You're not going to change the idea of this thing, you know? Whereas usually the king, you could change his mind if you plead to him, you know, if you reason with him or if you counsel him, the king could change his mind. But this thing, this statue is not changing, you know? And that's one way to interpret it too. It's like this thing is not going to change, if that makes
I mean,
sense.
it's you mentioned this idea of like people getting uploaded, or becoming like sort of like simulations or AIs or whatnot. It's kind of like there is a similar, like a somewhat like a tiny little similar pattern in there, where like there is someone who is flesh and blood, and then they become sort of an image, and so that's a seen as the, sort of like a higher state, like a state of salvation. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna become like this image, and then I'm forever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be there forever. And to me, that's just another parallel with that is how I think today's world is sort of saturated with images and sort of people or young people, they don't even have, at this point, they don't even have the capacity to even read longer books. It's like the attention span is sort of like optimized on the image. And and the quick succession of images. And it's almost like we are already kind of like worshipping a statue on the music sort of deal
Yeah.
where every situation is the image. We have to see the image.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we could take the idea of it, image as something that's not the thing. So definitely that we're in a world of images now. We're just always interacting with images almost. So I think it's part of it. Yeah, there's something about it's because this is a simulation or something. It's something that's not the thing. I'm not sure how I see that in terms of the 666 symbolism, but it's definitely something. I haven't thought about it in that way, but I think it's yours makes sense.
The the other thing you said about the law being sort of arbitrary, that reminded me, and you just said simulation, and I think there's a connection with games there. Games are a type of simulations. And I would say the sort of the law becomes like rules to a game when you have sort of like a how do you say, like an antagonistic, or like arbitrary law is like making up rules in a game, so to speak. That's just another parallel with this sort of simulation, image, games, rules, and law package. um, it's just what made me think of.
Yeah, for sure. Again, that's what we're living through. There's all kinds of weird laws. I mean, think about the social media stuff that happens recently. You look at YouTube and things like that. They made these weird laws and you're not even sure what the laws are. It's like they're not clear what's the laws and then let's take YouTube as a clear example. It's like, oh, we remove your content because it went against our policies. What are your rules exactly? Why don't you tell me exactly what your rules are? No, they never do. It's weird, huh?
Mhm.
So it's like we don't know what's the law, but we're still going to tell you you're going against it. Huh. And it's like you never know why really they remove your content. And it's and then even more interesting, what kind of brings me to when I play the music, you do what I say. And then they change their laws that we don't know, and then they retroactively enforce them. So it's like, oh, you made a video 10 years ago that goes against our current policy that we changed yesterday. And so now we're going to punish you retroactively for a law that we just created that makes zero sense, but they do it. And then they like punish you for things that you did before the new law was in place. And then what is this new law? We don't know. We're not going to tell you. So it's kind of a tyranny right there. I mean
that relates to the man of lawlessness title of the Antichrist is what you're describing is a lawless law almost. Like I don't know. You're almost kind of describing a flood as well there. Like a flood that happens where it's a flood. There's no way to you kind of have to follow you have to follow a flood that's coming, but it's too chaotic to call it a law per se.
Yeah, it's like they're doing changing influences. It's like not a law. You're right. It's not laws. They're just an influence that you got to follow
Mhm,
or else.
mhm.
And we could contradict ourselves too, by the way, buddy. We're gonna say this. We're gonna say blue today and red tomorrow. And when I say blue, you say blue, and when I say red, you say red. It doesn't matter if you
Yeah,
contradict. You're gonna do what I say. It's
yeah.
basically what we're under now. And we might think that it's kind of a preparation too. That the social media might actually be a simulation and a kind of a training grounds for what
Mhm.
they're gonna bring out into the world. This is total speculation, but you gotta test things before you do them, right? So
Right.
the social media stuff could be just a simulation for what they're going to do in the real world at one point,
Mhm.
where there's going to be these laws. Well, I mean, when we think about the emergency stuff, that's kind of what it is too. The emergency stuff is like today we say no mask, tomorrow we say mask. So you think we contradict ourselves? So what? I'm going to give you some weird argument that doesn't make any sense. That's going to be my explanation. But you're going to do what we say. It doesn't matter if you agree. It's like, it doesn't matter if we just contradicted ourselves from 2 weeks ago. You do it. You do what we say. It's kind of like training our minds to go
There.
along with this idea that would tell you what to do and you do it. Like we say jump, you say how high, which is what a slave does. But it's like they're gradually training us to do that. That's how I see it on social media and when they do the emergency stuff.
Mhm.
In an interview, you mentioned this idea, and I think it connects somewhat to the game. You mentioned this idea of hosting tournaments to see like what, so like test things. I think you mentioned it about UFC or MMA in regards to that. It was really interesting, this idea of like, yeah, let's host a tournament which is kind of like simulate some conditions of nature and then see who comes out at top. You think is that related to this idea of sort of the rule or like these, let's say, lawless laws, or
Could be.
in
I don't
some
know.
sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. It could be. It's like I don't know what's behind this thing that I see. It's like I see something. To me, I see obvious what I see, but I don't know like why they're doing it or what's behind it. I
Mhm.
mean, if I want to give them good intentions, I could. I'm not doing that now. I haven't seen enough, but I could just give them good intentions and say they're bringing us into a state of rest and renewal. I could say that, like, because what they're doing kind of looks like it, creating simulations. It's like dreaming, bringing us into a state where there's no logic to it. There's no control. That's what happens when you fall asleep. You lose control. You lose the logic of things. I could, if I was very generous with these, whoever the heck is in power now, I could say that they're like bringing us into a Sabbath. Even the robots thing, I think we talked about this when we talked last time. Even
Mhm.
the robot thing, if I wanted to be really generous, I could say they're building these robots and this AI so that we can rest, so that humans could be in a Sabbath for 1,000 years. Let's say
Yeah.
we need things to work for us. We don't have reserves enough to last 1,000 years. Let's say I'm just making this up here, but it's like we need robots to work for us during this time. So if I wanted to be really, really generous, I could find a logical reason why weird stuff that's happening is happening and make it like good or something. I'm not doing that now because I see too much deception, let's say, right now. It's hard for me to see these people as not evil. I don't even know who's behind it all, but I see what I'm being told. I see it as very deceitful, but I don't know. It's like I'm still waiting to see some signs. I mean, I see that it's anti-Christian. That's the primary reason why I don't want to engage in that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm worried they're going to do a simulation of Christianity so that I do engage in it. You see what I mean? So it's like they see that as a Christian, I'm never going to engage in your thing because it's anti-Christian. But then they might just say, okay, we'll just do a fake Christian thing. And then you'll engage, and then we'll have you too. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been contemplating Jacob and Esau a lot, and because I think that relates to simulations. And what's interesting about Jacob and Esau is because Esau was a hunter, the lamb's wool or the lambskin that Jacob uses was probably hunted and killed by Esau. Like the work that went into disguising as Esau was probably done by Esau. And I kind of see that with these data centers where so many of the people who are Christians, who are very traditionally minded, a lot of the jobs that they're taking right now are data center related, building data centers. And these data centers are probably being built to replace them, to replace these types of people. And this is, why, I said the only way I feel like we could get out of this situation or to, reset the cycle is to basically become Jacob, or at least put on, I don't know what that would look like, but I guess imagine a world in which Esau integrated Jacob properly to understand what was happening before it could play itself out. And because I do believe we have free will, and I do believe that we can resist these things. I don't think it's just we just kind of sit back and enjoy enjoy the ride. As much as because I think that that's the I as a Christian, of course, I'm willing to be martyred, but um I think that there are all these stories in which, you know, that's not the only Christian story. That's not the only Christian story, and I would even say that the Old Testament stories, like Jacob and Esau, are stories. They are our stories as well, and you see that with like Orthodox Christian saints, for example, who take on, like, Saint Constantine was a new David. We call him the new David in iconography, or you have uh, kind of Saint John the Baptist taking on very similar iconographic features to Samson, actually. Not cutting his hair and eating the honey in the desert and these things. So there's this typology that is shared between that which comes prior to Christ and that which comes after. And those stories, I don't know, part of why I wanted to talk to you and why I want to continue to talk to you is because I feel like you're working on those problems of how does the Christian interpret the Old Testament stories, and how do we play those out given the revelation of Christ? How do we interpret those things given the revelation of Christ?
Yeah, yeah. That is what I'm working on.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to interpret the ancient stories in light of Christianity, not by always just saying that it's a version of Jesus, let's say, which I think is true, but it's not always helpful to do that, I think. So I'm trying to kind of re-understand those old stories so that we can understand Jesus better. Actually, that's what I think would happen. And most of what I'm doing basically is just I'm trying to see what categories are important to use when understanding these old stories. And some of them I keep discovering, I keep finding some new insights about it, things that we don't care about anymore, but used to be really important, you see? So then it kind of shows me that we might be interpreting some of these stories lackingly. I think they used to interpret them correctly, not
Mhm,
so long ago, but they didn't talk about it because they knew. But now we don't know, so we need to talk about it, if that makes sense. Like
mhm, mhm,
everyone used to know. Like I'll use the example of I talked recently about that of fallowing. Okay, so it's an important concept which we don't care about anymore. Nobody cares about that anymore. Fallowing, the idea of fallowing the land related to agriculture. Almost nobody does agriculture, and even among the people who do agriculture, they don't do fallowing anymore. So this is a concept that's been lost to us in practice, but also I think in theory. We don't see the implication. So that's just one example of something that I discovered recently as something that is truly, truly important in the Bible, but we don't understand anymore. And so I think in the recent past, people knew about following, and it was obvious to them. So when they read the stories, they probably understood them better than we did. But that doesn't mean they took the time to explain them, because they didn't need to explain them, because they took for granted this. Now, it's just an example again, but this idea of following, they took it for granted too, because it was part of their lives. So they didn't need to explain the stories. See? So, but now we do, because it's like we lost certain practices that humans did for thousands of years. We lost them completely. So now it's like we gotta start thinking like that again, trying to find out how they used to think. And then we can understand certain things in an obvious way that don't seem that obvious when we read the stories now. So that's kind of what I'm doing. One example here, but there's many examples where we have to rediscover practices that we lost because we just don't do them anymore. So, and part of it also is kind of just looking at, looking at nature through a non-materialistic lens, which is kind of hard to do because we're so taken over by modern cosmology. It's hard to actually think like that. Trying to do that, it's very helpful when you do that. When you try to read the Bible with an ancient worldview, it's very, very useful. Sometimes things make total sense all of a sudden. They only make sense when you do that often. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And yeah, part of reading the old stories is what I'm doing. I'm trying to rediscover this ancient worldview. And then obviously my goal is to then interpret the New Testament with that too, using the old stories. It's like I'm trying to rebuild a little bit from bottom up. I'm not there yet though. I still, when I read Jesus, I still see it's like the light is too strong for my eyes, to be honest. It's like I see some of it, and then it just blinds me a little bit, so I stop and I go back to the older stories, knowing that later I'll return to trying to understand Jesus with these same ideas.
Can I ask you, why do you think this type of view or perspective was lost? Because it seems like, yeah, they took it for granted. And was that the reason that it was eventually forgotten? Or was there something else in play here?
But I mean, it's not like one reason. I think it's many reasons, but they took it for granted that was okay because they were living it. So they didn't need, it's like you don't need to think. It's like the fish doesn't know that it's in water, right? Because it's in water, it doesn't need to know. So it's something like that. They had their correct worldview naturally because they were living it. They were in it. So they didn't have to think about it. They didn't, you see, it's not something they did wrong. It's just how things are. The water because they were in it. So, and then what happened is, things changed too quickly, I would say. I think that's kind of what happened. Things changed far too quickly. And then we didn't have time to readjust our vision of things so that they fit the spiritual patterns, So it's like our sense of the world changed so rapidly, we didn't have time to adjust. So now we just lost it. And it's not for like one reason. It's like because these practices just disappeared because we replaced them by other practices, and so that's it. I mean, it's easy to imagine. You can imagine all kind of examples of that. Let's say they invent. I'm gonna do a really dumb example here, but it's could be useful. Let's say they invented this new kind of shower. Okay, you go in it. There's no water. You just go in it, and then there's like a purple light that lights you, and that cleans you. Okay, let's say they invent that, some kind of radiation thing. I don't know. It just cleans you with light, and then that happened there, and then like 2 generations later, that people are used to that kind of shower. People don't wash themselves with water anymore. And then what would happen when they would read the Bible, and then they would talk about water in the Bible? There's lots of things they wouldn't understand anymore. They would have no idea why water is connected to washing. They might still understand why it's about drinking. They might still have that aspect of water, but they would lose an important aspect of the reality of water, which is it cleans you. We use it for cleaning ourselves because all of a sudden they don't clean themselves with water anymore. They just use this weird laser thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would totally lose big chunks of the Bible just because of that. They wouldn't understand at all. It's like it would make no sense anymore, or they wouldn't see the implications of it, So that's a dumb example, but that's what happened basically with many, many things. Just lots of knowledge was wiped out in a really quickly because we invented a bunch of stuff to replace the old ways. And now we don't know anymore. I mean, just a simple example, just making flour used to be something many people did. And they used to do the grinding thing, they used to do that. So they had a sense of this idea of flour making, and they had this sense of this, what do you call that? The round stone there,
Grindstone?
It's called the grindstone. They would have the sense of it. And then, because they did it, it's like this boring work that you do, turning around in circles, grinding the flour. So then when it talks about that in the Bible, when it mentions that, let's say somebody dies because a millstone fell on his head from the tower. Let's say there's a story like that. Well, they probably understood that more than we do now, because we don't know what a millstone is. Maybe we know in theory, but we don't know in practice. And maybe part of knowing it is knowing it in practice. Because when you spend an hour doing this with the millstone, maybe you understand what that means a little bit more than me, who just looks at it in the dictionary or in an encyclopedia or something. What's a millstone? I haven't done this thing for an hour, for hours. But maybe if I did, I would know more what it means to die from that thing breaking your skull from the top of a tower. It's just another example, but there's so many things like that. We don't know. It's like, look, another example. It's like you use a spear. If you're used to fighting with spear, and then you're used to fighting with a bow, you know the difference between the two. You've experienced it. Not many people shoot bows anymore. Not many people use spear anymore. Almost nobody, I would say. So we don't know these things. We don't know what these things are. But for thousands of years, those were the weapons, you see? So now we have other weapons. So that then when it talks about a spear in the Bible, we don't know what it means, really. We know what it means in theory, but we don't know what it means in practice. Because when you do it in practice, you see the implications of these things. So if you fight with a spear in practice, you probably have a sense of it. Like, you got to be close, or, there's all these things that you learn from doing it. And with a bow, you're far and you can hide yourself. All these things, all these implications that I don't know myself because I don't use these weapons. But these are just banal examples, but there's so many. Almost all of what they're talking about in the Bible we can see that we lost it, really. So we can only understand it to a certain extent because we lost the practice of it. It's like the embodiment of the concepts were lost. Now they're just vague ideas. That's not worth much.
It's interesting, this idea of they become sort of foreign practices. This might be just a long shot. I don't know how related this is to this, but isn't it similar to sort of foreign practices coming into Israel in the Old Testament? Of like all these weird rituals, and sort of that there is a distance between sort of what what their world is based on, and then these weird practices. Only now it's not sort of ritual, it's more like everyday things, which that kind of chimes well with this idea of of the state taking over ritual aspects of the church and turning them into tools and sort of these structures and systems. And so we're kind of like, we live in a sort of alien world where there's no more embodied sort of um engagement with let's say even bread. Like I don't even know how they make bread, but they probably don't make it the way. There's nothing to do with, so I don't know, it's probably like they use silicone or something, I don't know. It's fully artificial. It's like a weird alien practice.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
going to get worse and worse too. Yeah, it's going to get worse. Everything is going to be non-natural. Well, they're telling us they want to make fake meat. They want to make fake everything, right? It's like their goal seems to be to make fake versions of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I don't know, that's going a little bit too far, but maybe that's part of what they're doing, is to remove us from our roots to nature and to reality, because these roots are the basis of understanding things. They're not just practices. They're practices that contain information in them. There's like making bread. Bread is just a practice. You do it. In this, there's information that we can extract if we do it. And then this information is basically leads to certain ways of thinking and ideas. And then, yeah, they seem to want to remove everything from the ancient world, including banal things like making bread and getting meat and things like that. It seems to be a goal to remove these things and make them completely artificial and integrate them into some. If they make the fake meat, let's say they are making it, but let's say that becomes a staple. If they manage to disconnect meat from animals, imagine that. Like, we don't think of meat as being animals anymore. So that's a good example of, if that happens, nobody will understand the Bible anymore. No way.
Yeah.
Among other things. It's like there's not going to make any sense. A lot of it won't make any sense. Whoa, what the heck is this? Like, none of it will make sense. But I think they kind of doing that with everything. They're disconnecting us from reality, and they're creating this new reality, completely new and artificial reality. that's like based on their knowledge, their science, and their technical knowledge mostly. But
It seems like almost magic, like it's like a magical technology or something like that.
yeah, absolutely. I think yeah, absolutely. I think I don't know if it's a plan they're doing, but that's what they're doing. I see them doing it. I don't know what the intention behind it, obviously, but I could speculate, obviously. But I think it's about there's probably many reasons. It's not always just one reason. There's probably many, many reasons behind the things they do. But one of them definitely is to disempower us. I mean, if meat comes from animals, almost anyone can raise animals. It's not that I mean, it is work, but it's not that hard to do. Something anyone can learn to do, but not everyone can make fake meat the way they want to make. Nobody can do that really. It takes weird laboratories and stuff like that. They probably cost millions of dollars. So if you're just an individual, you can't grow meat. But if you're just an individual, you can't have cows and you can't have sheep and you can't do these things. You can't have chickens and stuff. So you are the source of your own food, your own meat. And if you do the lab grown thing, well, then I'm a slave now. I have no control over the food that I eat all of a sudden. So that's one reason that we can imagine that's kind of obvious. It's a way to monopolize resources to themselves. And to make it impossible to be outside of that system. Because if they ever really make the lab grown meat thing, then they'll start pushing the idea that it's wrong to eat normal meat. I can already see it happening. They'll say that it's immoral to eat and slaughter an animal, and they'll have all these rules that they'll push these moralistic agendas that they'll make up, basically. And so it could become illegal to slaughter an animal in the future. Because if they replace the meat with their lab-grown meat, they'll say, ours is ethical, yours isn't. Or you kill animals for no reason. You don't have to kill animals anymore to get meat. Why are you doing that? So now you have to take ours. They might even make laws that say that you can't slaughter animals anymore. That's murder. They could say whatever they want, basically. So if they do that, then we can't make our own food anymore. It's just an obvious conclusion to it. It might be one of the reasons why this is happening. Might be others too, like kind of reasons, like I said before, to disconnect us from reality, because that's what it'll do. It'll disconnect us from nature and our ancient practices that our ancestors used to do for thousands and thousands of years. We used to raise animals and slaughter them. But now, let's forget about all that. These thousands of years of past are evil, basically, because we slaughtered animals. It's kind of a way to make a reset of everything. You artificially replace things. It's a way to reset things for sure. Disconnect from our past and yeah.
Beyond something like the Ark of Noah or even the Ark of the Covenant, are there examples that you can think of specifically in the Old Testament of, let's say, God's people properly working with technology?
Okay, beyond the Ark of the Covenant, you said? Or the
Beyond the
temple?
Ark of Noah or the Ark of the Covenant, yeah. You could touch on those things too, but even beyond that.
Where they made good use of technology?
They properly yeah, they properly used technology, and I guess do you see an application today?
Because it depends what you mean by if you really mean technology in the like strict sense. I think agriculture is a good use of technology according to
Mhm,
the Bible.
mhm.
I think city building is a good use of technology. These are all good. It's not seen as negative in the Bible. I think they're seen as positive, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think, as Christians, if it becomes consensus that, we have to leave the economy, for example, we can no longer buy or sell. We will need parallel technologies and parallel economies to properly exit. How much of that can be high tech and how much of that will have to be low tech in your
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, but I haven't thought about that. But it's definitely a good question that we should ask. So basically, the question, I guess, is high tech a problem, right? I
Mhm,
mean, that's the question. We can narrow it down to that, I guess. I think it might be. I'm
mm,
still not sure. But the reason why I think it might be is simply because it kind of makes slaves of us. I mean, I don't see necessarily a moral reason or anything like that. It's more like a practical thing where you're using. I mean, if you're a genius and you understand your high tech stuff, and maybe that's okay. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you do understand it and you can build it, no problem, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
But that's not really the case, you know? It's like the high tech stuff is stuff that we cannot build ourselves at all, I would say. And it's most people don't understand it. I mean, some people do, but most people don't. So there's something about this tech that makes us slaves to an alien power, really, like, or something that's not voluntary. So it's like by using these tech, you're kind of serving something that you don't know. You're serving a foreign thing that you don't know, or a hidden thing, or hidden power. So how much of it can we use if we're not in the system? Is what you're asking, right? So I don't know. It's a really good question that people should really start asking themselves now. But it's like I don't know much about high tech, so I can't.
Well,
It's like I don't know.
for example, like, at some point, somebody looking at a walkie-talkie, for example, right, might think that's high tech. It just depends. I think it depends on the perspective, but I don't think any of us would say a walkie-talkie. I mean, you might have an argument for that, but very
Yeah, yeah.
few, I think, would say a walkie-talkie. We shouldn't, as Christians, use walkie-talkies.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, good example. It's a good example. Yeah, because another issue is you're using certain things in a state of survival too.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things you can do in a state of survival that I think you don't necessarily want to do have as a standard for living.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a survival state, I think you probably use every tool that you can find,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I gotta put a parentheses around that because when you're in a state of survival, yeah, like if let's say I would be dropped on an alien civilization and I had to survive, and I found these weird tools, I'd use them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd use them because you want to survive. You're in a state of survival.
Mm-hmm.
I would feel weird about it though. It's
Yeah.
like, what is this thing? But you find this weird object that you don't know how it works at all. But when you press this thing, it starts the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna use it to
Yeah.
start the fire
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I wouldn't feel good about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would be in exile. I would be in a
Mm-hmm.
state of exile
Mm-hmm.
while doing that. So I wouldn't recommend that but I understand the idea too of specialization of knowledge. I mean, I understand the idea that it's not because all people don't understand something that it's like we don't all have to understand at every level of everything. I agree with that idea. But right now, the thing is, I don't trust the people. I don't
Right.
trust the
Right.
people who are making these
Right.
things. I
Yeah.
don't. And I
Yeah,
think
I
I have good
think I
reason
think
not to.
I think that's my conclusion as well, is that high tech, I mean, you see examples of that in, again, Christian Rome, things that for their time were high tech, Greek fire or the university or big hospitals and things like that. These things were high tech for, probably from the perspective of their ancestors or something. But they were still oriented towards the church. Ultimately, they were oriented towards the church.
Yeah, I agree that if the church was in power and I trusted totally the church, which I do basically, would I trust them to create this high tech stuff that I would use in my life? Possibly. It's hard to say. It's hard to
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
It's like total speculation. So I
Yeah.
can't, it's like because I don't work like that. I work with my gut usually. It's like I follow my gut. So when I see something fishy, I don't need to know exactly what's behind it. I see something that stinks. I know it. I don't care what stinks. It stinks, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like I don't know what's in the trash can, but there's something that stinks in there. I don't need to go look, you know?
Yeah.
And so when things stink, I don't want to participate in that, you know? So that's why I'm saying I can't say in theory what could happen in the future because I'm not there. So I can't use my other senses, which are a little bit more subtle, to know if I trust someone or not. Because,
Hmm.
I mean, this is a mistake too, often to like not listen to our gut, because my gut, I think they push this idea of that you always have to prove everything. You always have to give evidence and prove things in order to take a decision. That's total nonsense. It's not just how things work at all. I follow my gut, I follow my senses, and I don't always know what's behind it. And it doesn't matter. I don't need to prove anything. Okay, I'm gonna do. It's like if my senses tell me that this is not good, I don't have to prove anything. That's nonsense. It's like
Yeah.
I think
Prove
this
that
is
the
a
fruit is rotten. Make a proof.
yeah. I just
Yeah.
smell it and it's rotten.
Yeah.
I don't have to prove, because what does it mean sometimes even to prove something?
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
kind of a psyop, this thing
Yeah.
of prove. You got to prove, because we don't know how to prove most things. It's
Yeah.
just a way to shut us up,
Yeah.
basically. It's just a way to say, peasant,
Yeah.
take your place and shut up, because we can't prove things most of the time. We That's not how things work
There's
at
always
all.
remainders. There's always remainders. You write about this in your book. Kurt Gödel wrote about logical incompleteness, and you're basically reiterating that proof in your book that
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
true closed proof of anything. There's always a remainder from a human perspective.
Yeah, my book is based a lot on that, actually, because it's based a lot on the incompleteness theory. That was a huge influence on me when I encountered that when I was doing my studies. I was really amazed by that. I thought it was very, very interesting. It was a lot more meaningful even than maybe it's being given credit to,
Absolutely.
because it applies not just to mathematics; it applies to many, many, many things, just knowledge in general, I would say. So yeah, it's a big part of it. A
Hmm.
big part of my book came from that. But yeah, anyway, your question is really good about technology, I gotta say, and I think it's worth thinking about on
Hmm.
the long term. It's worth talking about and thinking about. It's like we got to figure out what we do with this technology stuff. We got to figure out in what conditions we can use it, in what conditions we can. Because I don't necessarily think we should become Amish.
Hmm.
I've thought about it. I'll be honest. I thought about it.
Yeah.
They got something going there.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not wrong. Let's
Yeah.
say. There's part of me too that thinks maybe that's not the only way, even though I think it's a good way that they chose, especially now that we see what's happening. I think they were kind of right about a lot of things, but I don't necessarily think it's the only way. I think it's like I wouldn't judge someone who uses technology. I
Hmm.
use it too, but I know we have to be careful.
Hmm.
I also see that we're kind of being led in places we don't necessarily know
Yeah.
or want,
Yeah.
through this technology stuff. And I mean, I see it all the time. It's not just about technology. It's also just about science and knowledge. Like the specialization of knowledge is used as a weapon against us, in the sense that in terms of argumentation, like I see it all the time. I'm sick of it, actually. It's like you say, "Oh, I don't like this AI stuff," and then the response is, "What do you know about AI? You don't know anything about AI. What do you know the difference between an LLM and an AGI or blah, 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 blah." I don't even know what these words mean, by the way. I don't care. So it's like they always have these acronyms too for some reason. It's always acronyms. I don't know what's going on with that. But it's like you don't know the difference between this and that. So therefore, you cannot pronounce yourself on this topic. Okay. No, so I disagree. Same thing. They did the same thing during the COVID thing. It's like
Yeah.
you're not a doctor. You're not an expert in viral stuff. Almost nobody is, by the way. It's like,
Yeah.
so nobody can talk, right? Is that what you're
Right.
saying? Nobody can talk because we're not all experts in this thing, virology field you invented not so long ago. So it's like it's a way to shut us up. Again, most of what's being done right now is just a way to say, "Shut up, peasant. Your opinion is not needed here." So it's like, but they're doing that with tech. They're doing that with just science in general. These weird specialization, it makes everything like covert, basically a cult, like where we don't know, we can't say anything, we can't understand it. And it's like, trust the experts, do what we say. And but the truth of the matter is, again, that's not how things work. You want to make me do something, I could disagree even if I don't understand. Actually, I should not understanding it is the reason I'm disagreeing with it. Okay.
Mm.
So it's like, eat this weird fruit that you've never seen in your life, this
Hmm.
weird looking fruit that you've never seen. No, I don't want to eat that. Well, how do you know? You don't even know what the fruit is. How do you know you don't want to eat it? I'm not going to eat it, man. Sorry. I'm no idiot. But that's basically what they're doing with everything now. It's like, eat this funky fruit that comes from outer space. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
never.
It's interesting when you talk about these specializations because high technology. This idea of high technology also just makes me think of this idea where like even as I look at in my room all these technological objects, I mean all of these different parts that they are made up of come from very different places from the world. It's like everywhere. It's like, oh yeah, the microchip comes from Taiwan. The plastic comes from whoever knows, the software comes from America, all of this stuff comes from different places. And so there's not one place that really owns the thing. It's like it's a foreign body everywhere. And so to me, this idea of like the church owning high technology, I mean, it depends if they are like given the tools, but just themselves, I mean, you can't recreate it. You can't assemble it. It's like all these parts are like these. They're almost like tags that are given, like they are taken from every place on the planet. It's like this, let's say this alien system just goes to a place or like a country and says, okay, what can you offer up to us? And then we're gonna take those parts and then make something that's gonna be present everywhere, but it's gonna belong to no one, basically. And so to me, it's a weird. So it's like I feel like there's a very practical answer to this, which is like, let's say there's this question of like, okay, well, could we use in the church, let's say, could you use computers? I mean, if you can, I guess you can, steal it from somewhere. I don't know. I don't see the way that you can separate these type of objects, these technologies from the larger system at hand.
Yeah,
It's like almost
absolutely.
like you can't do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think, yeah, I just don't think that's really
Yeah,
possible.
it's a good point. You can't separate it from that which created it. That's the point. And then that's also the point of the idea of idolatry and these certain things like that. It's because you can't separate it from the God that's created this thing. You're going to be worshiping that God in the end. It's kind of like Solomon and his foreign wives at one point. It's like, you think you could just get this wife, but you're going to end up worshiping her God, and you will end up worshiping. You think you're clever enough not to do, but no, that's not how things work. It's like you will end up worshiping the God of this woman, this foreign woman that you took. Like, he had thousands of wives, so it's like he was really risking a lot there what he was doing. But so basically, it's like kind of what we're doing. We have all these foreign things, these things that were created by some, we don't know. It's weird. It's always kind of
It's like
cult
alien
alien
artifacts,
stuff, yeah. And then you think you can just use this tool, but you'll end up serving the person that created it. I mean, anyway, I see it happening. I see the conditioning that's being done. I mean, you can easily see it when you use computers. Like, it used to be, you bought a computer. It was a finished product, right? It was a finished product. You bought it. That's it. You used it. That sounds more like a tool to me. Normal tool. That's not going to take you over, let's say. But now it's like they gradually trained us to accept the idea that this computer is actually not yours. It belongs to something above you. And so now there's like daily updates to, let's say you use Windows, like daily updates. What? There used to be updates every like 5 years or so, or, in the earlier systems. But that meant it was like more of a finished product that you could just use. But now it's like these things are open. They're always open to being changed and modified. So it kind of trains you with the idea that this computer is actually not yours. And now it's like, we're going to do an update, buddy. It's not up to you. It's like, do you want this update now or later? That's what they ask you now. It's not yes or no. We're going to do this update, yes or no, accept it or refuse it. That's not what they say anymore. Now it's like, not now, yes or not now. Not now means later, basically. It means it's like, you will take the update, buddy.
Yeah.
Whether you want it or not, you will take it. So that's like, they're training us with the idea that we're not in control of these systems anyway. It's not really yours. And if you refuse the update, probably at one point, I'm not sure, I never tried it, but probably at one point, your computer
stops
doesn't work.
working.
And no, somebody should try not to do the update. I think they actually just at one point do the update for you and they don't ask you. But it's like at one point, if you don't want to update your stuff, they're just going to break it in some way, or it's not going to be functional anymore. So basically, it's not yours. This object is not yours. It's kind of like people who buy computer games on Steam, let's say. It's all going towards the same direction. It used to be you buy a computer game. It's in this disc here. It's contained. It's finished product. You put it in, it's yours. But now it's like, it's not really yours. You buy it. It's almost like you're renting it from a store long term or something. They can do updates if they want. It's not up to you. And if you don't do the update, then it doesn't work. So they're kind of training us towards these systems that are open, that are not really ours, and that we use, but that don't belong to us. And it works too. I mean, I see it working on me. It's like I've accepted these updates every day. So they could do that with everything, though. That's the thing. They could do that with absolutely everything. Now we're seeing it with computers, but they could do this with absolutely every product they create. They could do these weird things where it's always open. It's not really yours, and it's always being handled by them. You have the hand of the master that's always playing with your computer, basically. from above, like an invisible hand. So that's kind of like you use this computer, you're going to be serving this thing that created it. It's a good example, I would say, of really concretely, it's what's happening. Yeah. That doesn't answer
It's
the high-tech question, though. It kind of, I don't
No.
know.
I mean,
no, it's
the purpose of this podcast in its totality is asking and answering that question from different perspectives.
It's a good question.
That's the point of Reveille is revealing, uh, I guess, the shape of technology as it's given to us by the state, and then maybe proposing a technology provided by the church and what that could look like.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm not against technology for sure. I'm not
Mhm.
against it. That's for sure. But yeah, for all the reasons I said before, that's why I'm kind of not scared, but doubtful, let's say. But yeah, if the church can do technology in a good way, no problem with that. I have no problem with that. I'd like that because then I'd replace all the weird stuff that's spying on me 24 hours a day by this
Right.
new stuff,
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'd be a lot easier to know who's behind what you're using, as well. Always who. It's always who, right? It's always who. Like, even if it's a power or principality, there's still a. Per-
Yeah, there's always a body to it, yeah, sure. But it's yeah. But I would say it's I mean, it's kinda like very magical. It's very like magical technology.
Mm.
I feel like it's all because again, like all of its parts are foreign. So there's no part that belongs to any one particular. So
Well,
like let's
it
just
still
say,
it still
if
takes
I'm
on a pattern ultimately from one person is what I'm saying. Who that person is, I guess, is kind of mysterious, but like there's a high priest somewhere, out there that's
oh yeah, sure.
calling down
But there's
the
also
pattern.
like a prophet, like a
Yeah.
false prophet or something like that. There's no but there's not yet. We don't see the full thing yet, I would say. But like even food, even things like food, it's like I'm in Hungary and we have a lot of land that you could grow many things on. It's a very good soil. We have very good soil. But it's actually cheaper or they say it's cheaper. I don't even know why this works this way. It's cheaper to import fruit from California than to grow it here. To me, that's already like, okay, I'm going into this box, which is like a supermarket. It's again, even in its ornamentation, so to speak, it's completely a foreign thing. It's not even part of the landscape. I go in, and then like they bring fruit from another continent. It's like my food is not even. It doesn't even come from here. Why we could have that, but it's just so even that is very strange. We're like, okay, we have like a clear thing of like, okay, you grow food on the soil and then you can buy it in like a market. So then now, but instead of having this is like a camouflage that this thing uses, but then it's like a completely different object. It's a completely different device that like brings the fruit from over there and then sells it to me in something that presents itself as a market, but it's again, it's a completely different system and technology. So to me, it's already even I'm at a point where I'm even questioning of like, wait, so what's the point of something like this? Because to me, it's like the supermarket where you can purchase the Californian food. The purpose of that place is not for me to get fed. It's something else. It's something, it has some kind of other purpose. And so it is a technology. So like I don't even think we really know what even the technology does in some sense, where there are these obvious things that we take for granted, and even that's like sort of like um how do you say, like like god, the word, I just forgot the word. Anyways, it's like yeah, it's used like that image of like the market is for example used as a camouflage to just do something else, some kind of
yeah,
weird.
yeah. No, I understand what you mean. I have other examples of what you're saying, but maybe that are a little bit more obvious than the supermarket, let's say. I mean, you could say, for example, what was the purpose of a washing machine? And then you could say, well, it's to wash dishes or wash clothes, let's say, depending. And then someone could say, well, I think the purpose of the washing machine was to remove replace women, replace one of the jobs that women used to do. And then maybe after that, guide women towards another purpose, because then they lost their purpose when they lost their function, one of their jobs. And so then they were able to guide them towards other purpose, because we need purpose in life. So we can't just sit around and do nothing. Well, some people do, but most of us don't want to do that. So then they guided them towards other purposes. So one could say that. I mean, one could say the real reason they invented the washing machine wasn't really to wash clothing, but was for this social engineering agenda,
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you know what? I don't think that's that crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's not that crazy,
Yeah.
because
I'm sure
what
there's
was the
books on it.
action?
There's
Yeah,
books. Yeah.
it would be interesting.
Yeah.
But because what actually is the reason to not wash your dishes yourself? Really? Like, if you already have someone doing that, what's the reason to replace that job with a machine? You see, because you can always ask that question. I mean, you can always just replace everyone's job with a machine if you want, right? But why do that? Let's say actually, there has to be a deeper reason, because if you already have someone doing the job, why would you need to find a machine replacement for it? It's not true that it's obviously that we have to replace every human with a machine. Actually, it's crazy. It's a crazy plan, in my opinion. So, what's the purpose? So, I think there is a hidden agendas behind these types of things. So, I don't think this is crazy what you're asking about the supermarket. Like, why is the purpose of this supermarket? It could be to replace our knowledge of farming with mass-produced mass-produced food, so that we don't know how to grow food. I mean, that it doesn't mean it's the only reason. That's the thing. It's not always just one reason to do things. That people have to stop thinking like that. That's like low-level thinking. You could do things with
Yeah.
10 reasons for them, 10 goals, like 10 milestones that you want to reach. You do this one thing. That's how smart people function. They do these things, and these things have many implications, right? And they want all of them. So that's, you can imagine that some of these systems were invented for other reasons than the one that they're telling us, for sure. I agree. I mean, I think the knowledge of growing food is a power that the people have had for a long time. It's a big power to grow your own food. It's like makes you free, basically. This makes you freer than someone who doesn't know how to grow their own food. So you could say these machines were created to replace the farmer, or replace because when you mass produce, you don't have to have many farmers that own many different plots of lands. You could just have one huge one that uses all kinds of machinery to grow up food, and that's why it's cheaper. Like you said, it's more expensive for you to grow your own food than to buy it at the supermarket. Well, because it's mass produced. That's the reason. I mean, so they just robbed you of your ability to grow food with this thing. It's not the only reason, but I think it is one of the reasons.
It's a deterritorialization. Some sovereign is taking territory from you, uh, in
Yeah.
a very subtle way.
It's, I would say, I wanted to say this, which is like, it's almost like trying to build potential space. So it's like they're trying to build like an empty space, which is like kind of like a contradictory thing to say. We're like, oh yeah, well, how do you build something that's empty and full of potential to be built upon? And that's what I feel like with these technologies. It's like, yeah, you could. There are many sort of it produces a lot of implication, and implication is sort of like a potential for a reading. It's a potential for a vision. It's almost like, like here the dishwasher example is like you put the dishwasher in the home and now you created empty time. So it's like now that has to be replaced with something else. So it's like there's a myriad of options that it can be replaced with, and then whatever replaces it, then we can say, oh, that was the function of the dishwasher originally. It's
Yeah.
like a weird.
Yeah, you create. I see what you're saying. It's a good way to say it. You create potential that it needs to be filled by something, and that something will be their thing that they want to put there. So it's kind of the problem solution reaction. It's kind of the problem reaction solution thing in a very small scale. It's like, oh, there's this problem is that women don't like to do the dishes. Then there's this reaction. We're gonna make a washing machine, and then now there's empty time. Now there's a higher level kind of problem. And then our solution to that is, well, women should go to the university now, and they should become leftists, basically, or become
Yeah, yeah,
become communists or something
yeah.
like that, become feminists or something. So
you
I
know
don't think
it's
it's crazy to think like that. I think the people who govern are smart, way smarter than we think, and they're able
Yeah.
to think at this level, for
Well, I
sure.
mean, behind many of these things is the military, and like R&D and Rand Corporation, wargaming, they wargame a lot of these things. They wargame economics. I mean, everybody kinda knows about, like, the Banana Republic, right? Things like that. That's the US government being involved in, like, banana production. That there's the military was heavily involved in that.
You know what that reminds me of? This whole idea of sort of military wargaming, simulation, even this idea of a forced update. It's like it's forced renewal. So it's like a space and you inject forced renewal in there. That you have to renew something, something has to go, something has to be replaced, and then you constantly have to have, it's like it is a type of flooding. I know we talked about this already, but
Mhm.
it is like a purposeful injection of flooding into spaces, into everywhere, into everything. Yeah. And at the beginning, this is kind of what I meant by like doing obfuscation on purpose. I think that's kind of like this is what I meant. But like you forcefully renew something, you forcefully introduce like an empty space somewhere for that something else to fill it in.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense.
There's that scripture that says, they will turn their swords into plowshares. What we're living in is almost the opposite of that. It's like turning all the plowshares into swords.
Yeah, weapons. Everything is a weapon. Everything in the modern world, everything is a weapon. Your smart technology, your car, your objects around you. I don't know, everything becomes sort of like a potential. It's a potential weapon. It potentially can become a
Yeah,
weapon.
a potential weapon. Yeah, I think that's a little better for my taste. Yeah, it's a potential weapon, something that could be used as a weapon against you.
Mhm.
I think it's a combination of weapon and shackles. It's like how do you call that? What you put on the oxen? What do you call that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're speaking about. A neck, it's not a neck brace. I'm not sure what you'd call it.
Yeah, we know what we're saying. I just don't know the word right now. Yeah, it's like what you put on two oxen to make them work together. Well, I think everything now that they create is a combination of that thing that I don't know the word of, and like you said, a weapon. So it's like if you do what we want, it's you're bound to this. You're chained to our system, and you're feeding us, with your resources and your information. And if you don't do what we want, then it becomes a weapon that like kind of chokes you or kind of attacks you. And I think basically, yeah, the idea of a social credit system thing, the social credit, I think is totally real. That thing, and it's kind of that too. It's like if you do what we want, we promote you, we give you hugs and kisses, we give you likes. And if you don't do what we want, then we kind of put the choke on you. So I think like every system is kind of a combination of those two things. It's like slowly it's becoming that. It's like everything is being all the information is always being gathered to. It's almost like a blackmail, really. It's almost like you're being blackmailed by these
Yeah,
systems. It's like we're spying on you. We're letting you talk maybe a little too much too, on
yeah.
social media and things like that. And then when you say something we don't like, then we got you. It's almost like a systematic blackmailing machine, really.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's
And then they
it's
can, like, guide you with that, They can, like, they did it with YouTube. It's like you say certain words we don't like, we're gonna demonetize your video, or we're going to, like, shadow ban you. They never admitted that they did that, but everyone knows that they did. We're gonna shadow ban you, and you'll see the effects. You, personally, you'll see. When I talk about this subject, I get lots of views, and when I talk about this one, whoops, suddenly my views,
yeah,
10 times less or 3 times less or
Yeah.
something. So it's like everyone sees it. So if you're easily manipulated, then you'll just on your own figure out that you shouldn't talk about this subject, but you should talk about this subject. And it's like just a way to guide you towards whatever they want, really.
mhm, mhm.
So it's like it's pretty powerful stuff actually.
Yeah,
And then if you make money with it, it's even worse. Right? Because if you make money with it, it becomes your livelihood, and then you're really susceptible to being manipulated with these things.
the peace and safety of, like, Thessalonians is what it looks like it'll be is, like, the peace and safety of the nuclear bomb. You have this total weapon, that is more powerful in the background, more powerful as a subtle influence than as an overt influence.
I mean, yeah, it's like the the nuclear weapon spawned the idea of wargaming and simulations. It is actually a big connection between those two things. And I forgot what I wanted to say. It was something else. Yeah, it's this idea of it's like just continuing this thread of high technology. I think really like now to me the only way that I can see, let's say, an adoption of let's of this like global technology is sort of like a similar conversion as it happened in Rome.
Hmm.
That's the only way. I think you cannot separate the system from the object, and so it means that sort of the system and the people in it they have to be sort of converted in some sense. So to me, that's the only way. But then I also see it as like a very alien thing. So I don't know if that's even possible at this point. I mean, it is. I mean, long term, I'm of course an optimist. I do think that in the end things are gonna be all right. But
Hmm. Well, the New Jerusalem,
yeah,
the New Jerusalem basically promises that all of these, all of these systems can be converted almost.
yes,
Yeah, hard to believe, but
It is.
yeah.
yeah,
I'll see Christ
I,
first.
yeah.
That's the only person that's going to
yeah,
convince me is when I see the return of Christ. Then I'll be like, okay, do some technology. That's fine.
Yeah.
But before that, it's going to be hard for me to accept this stuff because it's like, no, I'd rather
I mean, to
be
me,
like a poor guy, outside the system being hunted down by robots than being one of the robots hunting down the poor people running away from it, which is what's probably the two choices you have
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
going to get.
Well, God willing. I mean, that's again that's like part of this podcast. We may not, you know, we may not get out of this podcast the conversion of Rome. That's like a dream, but something I think more attainable is, you have some of the good guys working on parallel technologies, like a walkie-talkie, and or encrypted technologies or low-level markets that can sustain themselves outside the totalitarian system.
Yeah.
I
That's
would
yeah.
I would even say that sort of like, let's say that some of the technology and art to me are somewhat similar, or like in a similar vein. That's tools that the church uses, let's say. For example, iconography. I would consider that like a high technology, like a really high technology, for example. And I think it's influence, but that's again, it's like very subtle influence, but it's greater than let's say like a phone screen or a computer has, I believe. And it's like you don't have the computer and the whatnot and the cybernetics without, let's say, the image, without the icon, which is and which is to me very interesting. So like even you could think about it that way, where like these ways of or modes of representation, let's say iconography, it's very symbolic. It talks to each other, and then it also relates to reality. It kind of opens up new ways of seeing how reality unfolds. And I feel like that's a more powerful thing than over to like putting, I don't know, TikTok in your face or in the long term, in like longer term ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to go now
No, this
because it's
is
like
this is
six
good.
o'clock here.
This is
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun. Very interesting subjects that I usually don't talk about. And I usually don't like have conversation like this. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's gonna show my conspiratorial mind there,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is fine because I think people should have conspiratorial mind right
Mhm.
now, especially now. So, it was fun, guys.
Yes.
Good question. If that's really the question you're trying to answer, you're gonna have plenty of people who are gonna have plenty of things to say. I'm sure because it's really important. I think you should talk to some preppers and stuff if you want. At one point, if you're
Oh, yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're interested, because it's related to the idea of prepping and the idea of what tech can we use. Yeah, it's related to the Joseph thing, really, the
Mhm.
Joseph narrative.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was fun. Yeah, maybe you'll probably, I guess, cut out a few parts where there was some technical problems, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. I mentioned Joseph because Laszlo and I talked about a patron for the podcast, and we said Saint Joseph, the patriarch, would be the patron.
Yeah, makes sense. Noah and yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah, yep,
Yes, absolutely.
all
yeah.
right. So yeah,
Uh,
it was fun, man.
Thank you,
It
thank
was fun.
you again to you. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate your time, knowing that it's very, very precious. So we'd love to hear more about your book as it unfolds, and please keep us updated. If you'd like to come back on and speak about something in particular, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, for sure. I'll
Yes.
let you know. Yeah, yeah. Probably at
Wonderful.
the end of the winter. Probably after the winter.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right.
Well, Laszlo, if
Yeah,
you have
thank you so
anything else.
much. Yeah, no, it's been great. Yeah, thank you for this conversation. This was yeah, very lot of interesting stuff and imagery that we covered. It's very inspiring. So
Thanks.
yeah, thank you very much again.
All right,
All right.
Matthieu, you have a great night. God bless you, and may all go well with the coming book and your work.
Thanks.
Thank you.